Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Chicago Wildfire Ultimate. This is Dennis Michelson, D. Mike, out here at the new home of the Chicago Wildfire on the campus of North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. Tonight, it's your Chicago Wildfire taking on those feisty Indianapolis AlleyCats. And joining me up in the booth, and we're really missing them down on the field, it is Chicago Wildfire star Kurt Gibson. Kurt, welcome to the radio and TV booth up here at North Central College.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's a different perspective being up here in the booth versus on the field.
Opening pull coming, and your Chicago Wildfire will go on offense to start the game. Max Trotter to Pavel. Pavel and Max were quite the twosome last year. And Kurt, you and Pavel hit it off really well in that Pittsburgh game. But, man, I think we would have pulled off the win up in Minnesota if you hadn't gotten hurt.
Yeah, it was a frustrating first couple points. We did score the first one, but Pavel actually threw me a deep pass, beautiful-looking pass, and I came up short with a hamstring. I just, felt a little twinge, and unfortunately couldn't run the pass down. I had to come off, and now I'm sitting up here. But this is quite a view, I can tell you that.
Wildfire just playing the little patented small ball game, waiting for something to come open. And now Pavel uncharacteristically dropping the disc about 20 yards out from goal. The AlleyCats fire up towards the end zone. Chicago trying to recover over the top into the end zone for the score, and it'll be 1-0 AlleyCats.
I got to think the offense here was a little bit frustrated with themselves. It is the opening point, but Indianapolis, they weren't doing anything too difficult. It was a straight man defense. They were staying close to their guys, so Chicago had open space there, but they just weren't able to take advantage of that.
A couple of top players, in addition to yourself, Nick Goff out again tonight.
Nate Goff.
Big loss from the defensive line. So, Coach having to switch things around a bit out here tonight, but we'll see how quickly they can get things going. Chicago Wildfire back to receive the disc again.
Yeah, Nate's been playing both sides of the disc. He's played on some D-lines, some O-lines, so he's been pretty versatile for us. He's such a tremendous athlete and can really do it all on the field. So not having him out here tonight is definitely a miss for Chicago.
Starting O-line still on the field for Chicago, firing down, intercepted by the AlleyCats.
Yeah, you saw Pardo out there hesitate, do a little juke. Danny didn't see him at first, hesitated, and by the time that he threw it, Pardo was too far down the field, causing it to be an underthrown pass.
And the AlleyCats turf the disc, and your Wildfire will take over. For those new to the game, played on a typical football field, the 10-yard lines that are marked here at North Central College will be the goal lines for Ultimate. So an 80-yard field, 30-yard end zones. Max Trotter fires it out towards Pavel, but incomplete, and the AlleyCats will take over.
Yeah, you saw what happened there. Max Trotter went to throw a swing pass, but he tried to throw it a little too quick. It looks like it might have been a foul, but in this type of game with the refs, sometimes those little touch calls aren't able to be noticed by the refs, and, unfortunately, he should have just stepped out to throw a nice dump pass.
AlleyCats come up empty, though, and Pavel with the disc firing back towards the middle of the field to Max Trotter.
Got it. Look at Danny.
Working up the left-hand side of the field, now getting it back. Anytime Pavel's on the disc, you can expect a big play. Oh, Max Trotter in and out of his hands. Mighty Max usually very sure-handed. Looks like a little bit of nerves maybe on this offense to start the game. They're just making some unforced errors. AlleyCats work into the end zone for the score. Nice attempt on the D for Chicago, but the AlleyCats go up 2-0.
Yeah, this is a situation now the defense is going to come in. 2 breaks to start the game. You got to think the offense is a little bit frustrated. Again, they had open guys, but just weren't able to connect on some of those open opportunities. You know, a simple mistake. Max went up with one hand, an easy opportunity to go with 2 to secure that catch. He's gonna be kicking himself.
Expecting Woods, Rummel, Hart, and Sikora on the D-line as the starting handlers for D1 tonight. Leverson, Zeman, Captain Jack Shea, and Kingma on the cutter line. Woods in the middle of the field, working up the right-hand side. Nice crisp passing by the Wildfire, now trying to swing the disc over to the left-hand side. There's Rummelhart. Uber, as they call him, makes a nice play to Captain Jack. Jack tried to get that disc back to Woody, but knocked down. And the AlleyCats will take over. So Chicago offense struggling here. 8:18 left in the first quarter. Yeah. Foul on the Chicago Wildfire, a mark off 10.
Wow, he just threw that between his legs. You don't see that too often. And generally not a smart decision, but that worked to perfection. Chicago's really got to come up with a D here. Going down 3-0 is going to be pretty frustrating and difficult to come out of.
Not a lot of wind condition down here. Ooh, nice play by the AlleyCats. About a 20-yard rifle pass there for the score. Looked like John Wenger on the play. And it's 3-0. AlleyCats, 7:47 left to play here in the first quarter.
You know, being down 3-0 in this situation is definitely not a position you'd want to be in, with the team having 0 points at this time. But, you know, these are long games, and there's a lot of time left on the clock. And, you know, if I think of what Pavel's saying in the huddle right now, he's getting everybody to calm down. Hey, it's our first home game of the season, and, you know, let's just take a few deep breaths here and refocus ourselves because, you know, just getting out those jitters right now. So expect the offense to come out here and run probably some sort of horizontal stack or split stack to open up some space and take advantage of that man D from Indianapolis.
You know, there are simple like +1 buttons on the old clock and like other I don't know.
And the starting O will take the field here for the Wildfire for this point. That's Pavel Yadis, Max Trotter, and Simon Johansson as your handlers. Ross Barker, a very versatile player, along with Andrew Goldstein. They call him Chowder. Danny Miller and Mike Pardo are your cutters. Notice Pavel's trying to get the boys fired up a little bit here.
I think the O-line here is definitely thinking, hey, we want to do everything we can to make sure that we put this in, whether it takes 5 throws or 500. Getting it in here, just getting that first point off their back here and get on the scoreboard is going to be critical.
Is it almost easier to plan for a game when you got a lot of wind or you got a real where you're going upwind or downwind? Tonight, relatively calm out there.
Yeah, it is. You know, it is calm up here, but I know when they were warming up, there was actually a decent amount of wind, and so it looks like it may have calmed down, but it's sometimes difficult to see what it is at the field level. Plus, these colder conditions, especially to start the game, the catching and throwing what normally is pretty simple can be difficult, as you can see right now. Pavel's a little frustrated at that. Easy catch that should have been caught, but, you know, again, the frustration probably getting to him right now.
AlleyCats taking over in midfield. And now Chicago really desperate for a stop here. Don't want to go down 4-0 this early in the game. Whistle on the play. Looked like maybe a foul against Chicago.
Yeah, that was a foul against Pardo. They're going to get 10 yards here. We saw from Pardo, he led with his chest on that mark. You've got to not be so leaning towards the thrower, but rather use your arms to get bigger and prevent any type of throw to the break side.
Firing into the end zone. Nice defensive play closing on the disc. Boy, that would look like danger ahead for the Wildfire, but a great defensive play.
Yeah, that was the D that the Wildfire needed right now. Hopefully they can get up here and work it down the field.
What can you do as a player to adjust when you do have a night like this where it is kind of chilly and, you know, it looks like a disc acting pretty slick so far? Fire deep, wide open. Oh! In and out of the hands of the Wildfire player. And the AlleyCats will take over at their own end zone.
Wow, you do not see these types of drops at this level too often. Even despite the cold, even despite the conditions, this is just very out of character for any team.
Looked like Ross Barker was trying to get into the end zone on that catch and just kind of took his eyes off of it. Oh, AlleyCats trying for a big play but come up empty, and the Wildfire quickly looking to take advantage. Swinging the disc over to the left-hand side. Whistle on the play.
Yeah, after a couple turns here, the Wildfire really need to figure out a way to push this one in the end zone, get the defense out there, and just, you know, take a breath on the sideline.
Pavel with the disc. Looking over the field. Wildfire working it steadily into the end zone. Nice catch for the score. Mike Pardo with his first of the night.
Yeah, that was just a pretty simple cut to the cone from Pardo. Indianapolis, both teams were frankly tired at that point, but it was great for the Wildfire to finally get on the scoreboard. They've got to be feeling a lot better right now as far as their confidence. You mentioned, you know, what are some of the things that these teams are going through in these conditions? You know, if there are a couple turns, you're getting down, you really need to use your legs, right? That's going to get the blood flowing in your body. That's going to get you thinking not so much with the types of throws you're making or the decisions, but rather just getting the blood flowing, kind of get some of the, you know, maybe negative thoughts in your head out and cleared out so you can just focus on the running part of the game.
The very start of the game, we did have a pretty nasty sun angle as we're getting ready for sunset. How much does that hurt the visibility for players on the field? How much could that have contributed to maybe a little bit of the mistakes early on?
You know, the sun angles are, it just kind of depends which way you're going on the field. Sometimes if, you know, you're a receiver and they throw a huck that's pretty high in the air and you're looking at the sun, and, you know, sometimes if you're looking up towards the Frisbee, you catch a glare of the sun, it can be a little difficult. But I would say in general, looking at the sun or having any type of difficulty seeing with the sun is usually not an issue for the players down on the field.
Great throw by Plew into the end zone for the AlleyCats, and it's 4-1. AlleyCats with 4:30 left here in the first quarter. After the game, folks, you know you can head on over to the Board and Barrel Tavern right downtown Naperville. Great food over there. And I got to tell you, folks, if the old Wildfire comes back from this early deficit, ain't the beer going to taste cold tonight?
I got to say, I haven't been there before. Have you been there?
Oh, yeah.
Is it good?
It's very good food over there at the Board and Barrel.
I'm going to have to check it out.
A short walk right here from Benedetti Worley Stadium here on the campus at North Central College.
Downtown Naperville is quite nice. It's actually very, very nice place. Quaint. Actually, the office for my company is actually about a mile up the road, so not too far.
Wildfire on the disc. Pavel going deep. He's got Barker for the score.
That is exactly what they needed. A very easy score, essentially a one-pass goal. I think Pavel's probably been looking for something like that from the beginning, and unfortunately they weren't able to get in a position to do that. But Ross out in open space is very dangerous, and if Indianapolis is going to play this type of D and man D and Chicago doesn't make those mistakes, Chicago should be able to find themselves back in this game pretty quickly if Ross is able to continue to get open like that.
How much fun is it playing with a gunslinger like Pavel Giannis? That kid can throw from anywhere. He's got all the different throws that it takes to be great at this game, but he really has a sense of the field presence. He's a great field general on this team.
Pavel's a very, very unique player in my opinion, and candidly I've only played 1.01 games with him because in Minneapolis I unfortunately got a hamstring pull. But in the one game that I play with him, we certainly work together very well. He's a very astute player, true student of the game, and really spends so much time outside of in his free time working on his game, working on his mental and physical preparation, that he's just a guy you want on your team at any point. And that if Pavel is making a mistake, or if Pavel's out there just in general, that he's looking for your team's best interest and is doing every single thing that he can to perform at the highest level.
I kind of look at him as sort of like the Michael Jordan of Ultimate, because he's got that intensity level that just makes all the other players work just that much harder.
He does. I think the biggest thing he's missing is that he doesn't stick his tongue out when he's playing. But you're absolutely right. I mean, just after practice, he'll be there doing ladders by himself. I remember one of the first practices we had, he was out there doing ladders in the snow.
AlleyCats turn over the disc. The Wildfire coming up. Big Sakura down just outside the goal. Flips it into the end zone for the score. That was Drew Leverson coming up for the big point. And now it's 4-3 AlleyCats, and your Wildfire making a nice comeback.
Did Jimmy throw that from in the end zone? It almost looked like he was in the end zone there.
It's very close.
It's close.
Not, man, that was really, really close.
Taking a look at the replay here, the refs made the right call.
4-3 AlleyCats. 3:27 left in your first quarter. Dennis Michelson, Kirk Gibson on the call tonight from Benedetti Worley Stadium. And while it's fun to watch the great game of Ultimate, folks, it's even more fun to come out here to the stadium. Nothing quite like the Chicago Ultimate community to enjoy a great game here of Wildfire action.
It's interesting. This is a D line for Indianapolis, and both D lines that have come out ran the same exact offensive play. They both sent somebody from the front of the stack to the break side deep to start their initiation play. Something very, very simple. Generally, you'll find that the D lines don't have as many set plays as the offense, and so I don't think it's coincidence that they both ran the same exact play.
AlleyCats tried for a deep play there. Disc picked off by the Wildfire, but a whistle on the play. Wildfire will take a timeout with 2:49 left in the first quarter. It's the AlleyCats 4, your Chicago Wildfire 3. Welcome back to Chicago Wildfire Ultimate. Coming to you live from Benedetti Worley Stadium. Dennis Michelson, Kirk Gibson on the call tonight. And now the Wildfire with a chance to tie this up. And how big is it when you make a big comeback like this to keep the old hammer down?
You know, Wildfire almost went down 4-0, and just having the opportunity to get open. Oh, looked like that could have been a deep shot there. Danny playing pretty conservative there, but you know, generally these types of games can swing pretty quickly, so you just got to be close and mentally focused to be able to make sure to stay.
Nice defensive effort by the AlleyCats, but that looked like that disc was thrown into almost like double coverage. I don't think there was a high percentage chance of that one coming down.
Well, it was a foul call, so they were able to get the foul call here. Probably a good thing, though. There was 2 defenders. Oof, tight throw there.
Floats it out up the right-hand side of Pavel. Pavel into the end zone for the score. It's Mike Pardo, his second of the night.
You could see Pavel there really almost willing that goal into the end zone, just using his legs to just beat his man all over the field. Especially in that last sequence there, he went up the line. Just you could tell the amount of effort and heart he was putting into this to make sure that they got that break and tie the game. Those types of substitutions are usually pretty critical. When they put the offense in after the D gets the turn, you're almost expecting to make sure to put that in, because if not, you know, you're running around there on defense, you get tired, and then you've got to play another offensive point after it. So making sure that you get those scores is always critically important in those situations.
How much tougher is it at this level of Ultimate than in club action when you're playing back-to-back points like that?
You know, in the AUDL, it's actually much more difficult to play back-to-back points, and the biggest reason why is the time in between points. In this league, the time in between points is generally somewhere around 30 seconds, and in club, it's usually over 2 minutes. So, you know, if you think of yourself doing some sort of workout in terms of recovery, you've just got almost 4 times more recovery in a club game than here out in the AUDL.
AlleyCats with the disc, working up the left-hand side of the field. That's Jacobs back into the middle of the field. Wildfire with nice, tight defense. AlleyCats at midfield. Working it back, giving up lots of ground. Now they'll go deep. Got a man out there, but the Chicago Wildfire defense comes up big.
That was about a 45 or so plus yard flick to a guy that was much too far away. Unless you've got an absolute cannon, that throw should have come earlier or just not thrown at all.
Wildfire now quickly going on the attack, working the disc up the right-hand side. Stall count.
Oh, you can almost hear the Indianapolis sideline from all the way over here. You can tell how intense that they are right now. So there's about 30 seconds left. Indy's probably going to want to try to throw a couple passes and really reduce the amount of time on the clock and hopefully score with just 0 seconds left on the clock in the quarter, not give Wildfire a chance.
AlleyCats on the attack. Floats it into the end zone for the score. Looked like the Wildfire was playing real good, tight defense, but the AlleyCats being nice and patient, letting the play open up, and it is 5-4 AlleyCats. 19 seconds left in the quarter. Lots of time to tie this one up before the end of the first break.
Yeah, 19 seconds does not seem like a lot of time, but when you're out on the field, generally the feeling is to rush it, and a lot of times you'll see teams get to maybe the 30 or 40 after 2 or 3 throws and then just try to throw it to the end zone much too quickly. when they usually will have time for another throw or two to move the disc up 10, sometimes 20 yards because the defense is hanging so far back, giving you a much higher percentage throw to the end zone.
AlleyCats with the pole. And it floats out of bounds.
Wow, that is not something you want to do here at the end of the quarter. You're going to give the Wildfire the disc in the center of the field and probably 15-plus yards closer to the end zone. That puller's probably kicking himself right now.
Pavel in the middle of the field. Pavel and Max work really good together all last season. Fires it deep, but too deep. But there was a whistle on the play.
You could see Pablo there. He had the opportunity to easily get it underneath, but he chose to go up the line to put himself in a power position to get off a huck and reach the end zone. If he went backwards, it was very unlikely he was going to be able to reach the end zone with a good throw.
Fouled on the play. Will get a chance to put it back into play with just 3 seconds.
Danny better put it up here.
Over the top, Danny Miller with the hammer into the end zone. Knocked away by the AlleyCats, and that's the end of your first quarter. So at the end of the first 12 minutes of play out here at Benedetti Worley Stadium for the home opener for the Chicago Wildfire, it's the Indianapolis AlleyCats 5, your Chicago Wildfire 4.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the Pivot Network 5 throwing contest. Please turn your attention to the middle of the field, where
Welcome back to Benedetti Worley Stadium. It's time for the start of the second quarter. AlleyCats will be receiving the disc. up 5-4. The home opener for your Chicago Wildfire. And folks, come on out. Great season of Chicago Ultimate Frisbee right here on the campus of North Central College. All year long, firing into the end zone for the score. Wildfire just did not seem to be on the marks there to start this quarter. 11:40, 20 seconds in, and now it is 6-4 AlleyCats.
You know, anytime you see a team running a side stack, it was very clear Indianapolis was trying to isolate space on the right side of the field. And I got to think the defense is kicking themselves that nobody went out to poach the lane, because Indianapolis was clearly trying to just isolate cutters up and down that right side, and that's exactly what happened. They just went one after one after one right down the right side of the field and created an easy score. You know, I think next time if Indianapolis lines up on that left side or on the right, they've got to have somebody out there in the center trying to help out some of their cutters. There's just too much space on this field to be able to play a tight man-to-man defense for 7 seconds.
Chicago Wildfire will go on offense here. Mighty Max to the middle of the field.
There's Pavel going deep.
Pavel. He's got Pardo for the score. Oh, in and out of Pardo's hands. You don't see that every day, folks.
You saw that. You knew as soon as Pardo cut deep, you knew Pavel was going to put that up. But, yeah, that drop is unacceptable. And
hit him right on stride and looked like it was going to come down with the disc. Then in and out of his hands. I do think these cold conditions are having an effect on the Wildfire. Now the AlleyCats. Oh, great play.
Yeah, number 5 for Indianapolis just decided to stop and let Chowder come in and get that D. I mean, Chowder didn't do anything special. That guy completely let him in there.
Disc was just kind of hanging there ready for him to close on it. Now Pavel quickly on the offense to Max. Max looking over the field. Bends it around, trying for Pavel, but picked off.
Again, unfortunately, there was no cutter after Max got the Frisbee, and so they were able to poach off, and when Pavel was cutting up the line. Got to think Pavel's pretty frustrated right now.
AlleyCats will take a timeout to get their offense on the field here. Up 6-4, 10-12 left in the second quarter. So when you use the term poach, can you describe that to folks that are not as fluent in the ultimate lingo?
The term poach is generally used when if you are guarding a player, typically you want to be within 2, 3, 4 yards, 2 or 3, 4 yards, sometimes even 5, close to him. And when you say the term poach, it's really you're trying to guard your man, keep him from potentially getting the Frisbee in any type of power location or generally at all, but still be able to help out a fellow defender if they are their cutter is isolated in space. So really just occupying a part of space of the field that your defender is not going into, especially if he's not a threat, and really just almost covering 2 guys at once. So it's definitely a very, very useful tool, and a smart defender will always look to poach in situations. In fact, I'm surprised the Wildfire aren't lining up in a situation for them to poach. They're playing straight man D with Indy right now.
AlleyCats on the attack. Working the disc up the right-hand side of the field. Rick Gross. Back to the middle to Jacobs. Disc is deflected, but a great play by Jacobs to prevent a turnover there. Lets it loose. Hanging up. Chicago Wildfire tried to make the play, but AlleyCats will quickly score. 7-4 AlleyCats. 9:25 left to play in the second quarter.
So that score was originally, that turnover was right around the end zone line. And when you think about different types of plays and really tenets that can potentially change a game for a team, is not being able to score around the end zone. And when the Wildfire turned it over on the end zone, although it was a simple pass, something that you wouldn't think, hey, normally happens, the players generally don't make those types of mistakes. Even those small little things can cause teams to lose games by, unfortunately, not being efficient around the end zone, because those are the ones that you really want to score. I mean, those are must-haves.
After tying the score up 4-4, now Indy on a 3-0 run here, up by 3 with 9:25 left to play. Another short pull by the AlleyCats. Wildfire going on offense. Pavel looking over the field. Nothing opening up. He'll dump it to Max Trotter. Max to the center of the field. Another unforced error there by the Wildfire, coming up empty, and the AlleyCats will take over at midfield.
You know, one of the things that it looks like Indy's doing is throwing a straight-up mark, and I think generally teams don't do that, and it might be messing with some of the rhythm of the offensive line right now, because it doesn't seem like they're hitting the lanes that they should be, and it's hard to tell, but it might be because of that straight-up mark.
Another timeout called by Indianapolis. Coach obviously did not like the way that offense was unfolding there, and he wants to get in his good handlers.
Well, I think he probably just wants to make sure that they punch this in. Like I mentioned a minute ago, that it's sometimes the decisions that you make around the end zone line that can make or break a game. And, you know, Indy, if this is their first time out, they've got 2 per half, and he's probably saying, hey, you know what, I want to make sure to punch this one in.
7-4 AlleyCats. Some fresh legs coming into the game for you, Wildfire. C.J. O'Brien. Looks like Dan Vakarov on the defensive line now here, too. I like to call Dan Vakarov the human solar eclipse. That is a large man.
Dan is a very large man, and he also can be extremely, aggressive, and he almost plays the game like it's football. And he's strong, he's big, and he's fast. So, I mean, look at him right there. Look at him move his feet.
In addition to his great defensive efforts here for the Wildfire at games, of course, he helps with the conditioning of players all week long. And AlleyCats into the end zone for the score, and it's now 8-4 AlleyCats with 8:26 left.
Dan leads a lot of the warm-ups for us, and a lot of sometimes the workouts that we do, and it's actually quite humorous sometimes. Some of the exercises that he has us do are, if you were to look at them from as a spectator, you would almost think that they're a bunch of animals doing some sort of weird tribal dance. It's quite humorous. But you know what, I actually, if I had to vote for who should lead warm-ups, it's definitely Vok, because being 32, I need my extra 5-10 minutes of warm-up, so I'm okay doing some of the weird exercises.
Your Chicago Wildfire taking over the disc. This is a must-score situation for the Wildfire. They have to stop this run of the AlleyCats if they want to get back in this game. Pavel with the disc. Fires it up the middle of the field to Pardo. Pardo in and out of the hands of the AlleyCats player, Danny Miller, with the recovery. Now firing it deep. Hanging it up, deflected away.
Wow, that was...
Ross Barker was there for the play, but the AlleyCats had a lot of time to close on that disc.
That was 2 mistakes from Pardo in 2 throws. Those are the types of things that you can't have. He threw it behind Danny, somehow was able to catch that, which was unbelievable. But usually in those types of situations, you want to get a completion underneath your belt. And throwing a huck, a 45, 50-yard huck after that is generally not the smartest thing you want to do, although he almost just got a hand block right there.
Pardo deflecting the disc, but the AlleyCats coming up with the play in their own end zone. That could have been a disaster. Now they'll fire it deep. Hanging up in the air, and the Wildfire snatching it out of the sky for the interception. Whistle on the play, though. I believe they called a foul on the Chicago defender on that throw, and AlleyCats will get the disc back.
So if that play had gone through, that would have been 2 hucks from the Indianapolis D-line. That would have been short turnovers. If they can prevent themselves from making those types of mistakes, they should be able to. Wow.
Going deep for the score. From about 40 yards out, through that overhand for the score. Impressive play, considering that was the D-line out there.
That type of throw, a hammer throw to an offender in stride, is probably one of the more difficult throws that you can make, and you don't see that too often. So for the Indianapolis offender to make that throw, hit the guy perfectly in stride, that's a very, very, very difficult throw that was perfectly executed.
5-0 run now for the AlleyCats. Up by 5 with 6:33 left to play in the second quarter. We're coming to you live from the campus in North Central College. This will be the home for your Chicago Wildfire all season long, with the exception of one game in June where we'll be playing up in Rockford, Illinois. That's going to be interesting. Kind of a neutral site game against the Madison Radicals.
It is. Got to think back to my University of Florida days playing against Georgia. We'd have the world's largest cocktail party. It was in Jacksonville, Florida, which is technically in Florida, but was the neutral site for those games. Always a fun time. So I imagine Rockford will be the same.
Pavel going deep. Disc out there for the score. Who came up with that one for the score for the Wildfire on that one?
That's Vach.
Is that Don Vacaroth with the score?
Don't see Vach on the O-line too often, but he got his fantasy point out of that.
9-5 AlleyCats.
That was a big score for Chicago. They were on a 5-0 run. It was an easy score. You know, and the thing that you got to think the offensive line is frustrated about is that really they're making their own mistakes. Indianapolis is not taking the disc away as much as they are just making poor decisions with the disc and or dropping it.
Very uncharacteristic unforced errors by the Wildfire tonight. The thing is, Kurt, when most of your mistakes have been these unforced errors, not the result of the opposing team, does that give you hope that you can get back in the game pretty easy if you just make the plays?
It can. You know, I think the difficult part is that, at least on offense, it's been almost everybody. It hasn't been one specific person that you can either, take them over to the sideline and give them a talk and say, hey, let's calm down. But when it's usually everybody, that generally means that the team dynamic, the mental state of some of the players, they're usually in a type of either shaky state or some sort of frustration, and it's affecting everybody, which is generally not good.
Wildfire's been flirting with disaster on this possession, but they're moving the disc up the field. Some great recovery plays. And now Rummelhart with the disc. Works it back to the center of the field to Woods. Woods floating it out to Leverson. Drew back to Woods in the middle of the field.
This will be a big point if Chicago can put this in.
Captain Jack to the middle of the field. Oh, close to disaster there, but the Wildfire hanging on. This point has not been pretty, but if they get it done, it'll look good on the scorecard. Leverson again. Fired it deep. Indianapolis defender reacted poorly. And Sakura comes up with the score. A nice play in traffic by Jimmy Sakura, and it's 9-6.
That was a great play. It almost looked like the Indianapolis defender caught that disc first and Jimmy stole it from him. Clearly that didn't happen, but what a great play. You know, the best thing about that point, it was a break, but that was the Indianapolis O-line that this Chicago D-line threw quite a bit of passes, and what usually goes unnoticed is the amount of effort that the O-line has to exert to play against any type of D when they turn it over. So getting the offensive line worn down on that point was probably the biggest win for Chicago Wildfire in that situation.
4:22 left in your second quarter, and it's 9-6 AlleyCats. But we're starting to see a little life out of the boys in blue. AlleyCats waiting for the disc to float back down from the heavens. Working the disc right at their own end zone here.
There's a pick there.
The pick rule in the AUDL. Some games I see the referees calling it close, and other games it goes unnoticed. AlleyCats to midfield.
Yeah, it just kind of depends how blatant it is usually. Sometimes you can get away with it, but other times it's very, very obvious if guys are running into each other.
AlleyCats firing for the end zone.
Wow.
Disc almost looked like it was deflected by Neil Phelps, but comes down into the hands of the AlleyCats offensive player for the score.
Wow, it looked like he thought he was going to get that D very easily, and it must have just popped up, or he wasn't able to get a good jump at that. Those are the frustrating ones because it looked like an absolute meatball for him to pick off and start going the other way.
3:34 left in your second quarter. AlleyCats 10, Chicago Wildfire 6. Next home game here for the Chicago Wildfire coming up on May the 12th against the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds. Wildfire to the midfield.
Ooh. Danny was open deep there. Pavel decided to pull up.
Max Trotter in the open field. Nothing coming open, so he'll dump it back to Pavel. Pavel up the left-hand side to Pardo. Back to Pavel. Back to Max. Max working it up the right-hand side to Pardo. Pardo flips it into the end zone for the score.
See, the difference there on that end zone point from the one that they turned over was that when Pavel and Mark Pardo cut up the line, there was a follow-up cut to that. And so that caused the Indianapolis defense to stay tight on the rest of their guys. And when they didn't happen, there was a delayed upline cut, last end zone point, and somebody was able to poach off. So much, much better job from the Chicago Wildfire offense.
Who was that came up with the score for the Wildfire?
It was Danny.
Danny Miller.
Danny Miller. He's been big for the O-line all year.
Yeah, coming into the game, Danny led the team in goals with 9. And with the explosive offensive players that this team has, that's saying something.
Yeah, Danny's been able to do a really good job of fitting with some of the other cutters who might be more well-known. And, you know, Pardo led the team in goals by far last year. And Danny, you know, coming from a smaller school, not necessarily well-known, but really able to fit into a nice role on the offense.
AlleyCats on the offense, working up the right-hand side about midfield. Now firing it up the left-hand side. That's Plew. Give and go. Plew into the end zone for the score. 11-7 AlleyCats.
That play right there, Keegan North was able to throw, caught it underneath, threw essentially a break mark inside-out backhand to the previous thrower up the line. Really just opened that up very nicely for Indianapolis. He was on the U24 team with Ross, and I know Ross respects Keegan very much. Very solid player.
How frustrating can that be for a defense when you look like you're going to have them contained, then all of a sudden a couple of quick throws and the whole field is wide open?
Yeah, it's those little opportunities that, as a thrower, you really try to take advantage of when the mark moves. Sometimes you can do it from a juke or a quick burst of speed out after a throw. Oh, here comes the throw from Ross.
Ross Barker going deep. Pavel looking for the disc, and he will catch up for it with the score. Ross Barker to Pavel. Giannis, what a play.
A nice little dab there from Ross after the throw. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, why he was on the U24 team, one of the many reasons. That was an absolute beauty of a huck from Ross, because that disc was well out in front of Pavel and just really hung there. Just a perfect huck. I don't even think I would throw the disc like that, but Ross was that was a great throw from Ross.
The Wildfire additions this year all seem to be very versatile players, like yourself, who can do a little bit of everything, and Ross Barker is certainly another one of those players that can make the big throw, he can make the big cut for the score as well. And I'm impressed with his defense when they do turn over the disc. Very aggressive.
Ross is a tremendous athlete. Ross played high school basketball, was trying to play on the college football, D1 college football, and really at Wisconsin. And obviously we all know how great of a program they have. He unfortunately wasn't able to continue that, but found Frisbee, and he's just a tremendous athlete. His brother was a great athlete at the University of Minnesota, was a wide receiver there. And, honestly, I think with Ross, he's got a lot of upside, and I don't think he fully knows how good that he can be. A lot of the
AlleyCats going deep for the strike, and the AlleyCats will come up with a score. 12-8. AlleyCats quick strike there.
A lot of what Ross can bring, I don't think he fully knows yet of how much he can bring to a team, but he's slowly working into it and continues to improve.
1:37 left in the second quarter. The AlleyCats up by 4.
That was a great throw from the thrower in that situation. That was an inside-out flick. Excuse me, that was a flick that was an outside-in flick on the inside, which is generally not something you see very much, but just because of the way the receiver is cutting and the angle the disc is going away from the receiver instead of back into them. Great throw from the Indianapolis offender.
Ross Barker, middle of the field with the disc. Oh, fires it right into the hands of the AlleyCats defender. And the AlleyCats with the turnover.
Fortunately there, Ross rushed it a little bit. Max Trotter didn't give him as much. He started cutting a little bit too soon. But it looks like they're going to...
AlleyCats going deep. Collision in the middle of the field, but the AlleyCat player came up with the disc. Just outside of the goal line. Nothing open, so he has to give up some ground. Inside of a minute. Working the disc up the left-hand side.
Really need to get a stop here. Don't want to give up a point here at the end of the second quarter going into half.
33 seconds left. AlleyCats working it again up the right-hand side. About 7 yards out. Now giving up some ground in the middle of the field. Making the big old swing into the end zone for the score.
You know, again, that was just a silly mistake from the Wildfire. Ross could have thrown to the dump, spent another second there, but spent just a little bit of time looking downfield at Pavel, who was covered. And unfortunately, by the time that he looked back at him, just made the throw a little bit too quick. And when you rush some of those throws, that's when you're going to get yourself into trouble. As a thrower, you always want to try to envision before it happens where your cutters are going to be before they're actually in the space. Because then when you have to change between one cutter to another or a cutter to a dump, you know where they're going to be, and you already have the disc positioned in where you can release it or throw it in a way that's going to give it your receiver an easy chance to catch it and the defender no opportunity to get a D.
Wildfire taking over possession. They need a strike here before the end of the half.
So you saw what Indy did there. They were poaching tremendously, making it very difficult for.
Time expires. The Wildfire coming down with the disc, but about 5 yards short of the goal line, and that will be it for the first half. So at the end of one half of play out here at Benedetti Worley Stadium, it's the Indianapolis AlleyCats 13, the good guys, the Chicago Wildfire 8. We'll be back with your second half action in about 10 minutes. Welcome back to live Chicago Wildfire action. Coming to you live from the campus of North Central College, Benedetti Worley Stadium. This is Dennis Michelson, D-Mike, along with Kurt Gibson up in the booth. And Kurt, halftime action here. What kind of a adjustment can the Wildfire make here in the second half to get back in this game?
Well, you know, they're not strategically, they're not doing anything that, you know, Indianapolis is not doing anything that Chicago can't handle. They've just been making very simple, fundamental mistakes that normally you just don't see. And it's been a lot of different folks. So, you know, I can only imagine the halftime speech from Pavel and the gang was, hey, guys, you know, we've really got to, you know, put our mental focus and hone in on, you know, just doing the little things right? Catching the Frisbee, throwing the Frisbee, using our legs, you know, making simple downfield cuts, not trying to do too much, because when you're down 5, sometimes the thought is, hey, we've got to press. We've got to score all 5 points at once, but you really just got to focus 1 point at a time. And so I think right now Chicago's got to come out, score an offensive point, and then get the D back on the field, and, you know, hopefully rattle off a couple of breaks here.
Wildfire will receive the desk to start the second half, down by 5. Kurt, what's the physical prognosis for you? When are we going to see you back on the field?
I won't be at the Pittsburgh game. I was going to miss that anyways, so I'm going to be targeting the Madison game here at home, our next, I guess, the second home game from today. So, yeah, being injured is not the most fun thing in the world, but, you know, it's just one of those things in life you just got to deal with and, you know, put in the work to get better.
Going deep into the end zone, but out of the reach of the Chicago Wildfire receiver. Trying for the big play, coming up empty, and the AlleyCats will take over the disc for the first time here in the second half. Up by 5. AlleyCats looking deep, but Wildfire defense made the good adjustment to keep that cutter from being able to get loose. So they'll just swing the disc around. Great play by Mighty Max, coming up with a good deflection there.
Yeah, Indianapolis was running pretty hard on that offensive point. You know, they really wanted to score. Chicago did a good job of containing them. And you'll see if we can run it in. Pardo to Ross.
Ross Barker for the score, and a nice recovery by the Wildfire there. Coming up for a big point.
It was great to get that D near the end zone, really shorten the field for the Wildfire. And, you know, Indianapolis, candidly, they were working the disc pretty well, just an errant defensive, dump throw, and Max was able to come up with a D. But I think really what Chicago was able to do that hopefully on defense they'll be able to execute a little bit better is some of that poachy defense. Ross came up from one of the cutters that Indianapolis sent deep. There was a couple switches that actually prevented them from getting an easy deep look, which they might have had if they weren't doing that and weren't heads up.
How different is it watching the game from up here to see things unfold than down on the field as a player?
You know, the vantage point from up here makes it a lot easier to see from a broader perspective what's happening and just the little nuances that you can't catch at eye level.
AlleyCats on the disc. Throwing it up for grabs, but they make the recovery on the play.
Spacing is so key in Ultimate, and being able to see the space is very clear from this vantage point. Sometimes from the sidelines or even the stands, it's very difficult to see.
Working the disc up the right-hand side. Wildfire making the play on the disc, but the disc hangs in the air for the AlleyCats offensive player to make the recovery for the score.
Indianapolis has done a good job of, I mentioned spacing, taking advantage of the space that Chicago's giving them. You know, whether that's to start off the play with a high-release backhand to the break side, really open things up for Indianapolis and really just almost getting open at will in some of these situations. And if they're not, they're doing a good job of resetting and giving those next cutters open space. And I don't care what team you are, it's nearly impossible to just guard every single offender one-on-one in the open space that's on these types of fields.
How aggravating is that for you as a defensive player when you make the play on the disc, but you don't knock it down or grab the disc away, and the other team can score on a play like that?
That's got to be pretty frustrating. I think, I don't know if that's happened to me in my career, but I'm sure it has. But, that's one of the things they tell you, to catch your Ds if you can. Ooh, that was almost a stall
Ross
there.
Barker to the right-hand side, Pardo. Knocking on the door for the score. Back to Pavel. Pavel to Max. Max looking into the end zone, fires it away.
Indianapolis playing very strong man D there. Really caused that turnover. They got out ahead of Simon, and he caused them to stop, but Max still threw it. Very good defense on the end zone line from Indianapolis.
Now the AlleyCats with the disc, working it up the left-hand side of the field.
You've got two guys guarding one player with Chicago downfield, and they haven't figured it out yet. Finally, they picked it up. And nobody's helping. Simon's got to get over to help there.
AlleyCats, wide open player. Disc hangs in the air, and Wildfire defender making a nice recovery on that play.
It was unfortunate for Indianapolis. The guy was wide open. Chicago did not recover and did not go deep, and Simon was able to get that deep.
Now Pavel laying up there deep into the end zone for the score. What a miraculous play by Chowder!
The difficulty surrounding that type of catch was not in the layout, but that was a long point. And you saw Chowder actually had to try to catch up to his defender, as his defender was the one that went deep previously. So he did a lot of running before that near 50-plus yard sprint that he just did. So kudos to Chowder for making that type of play when you're fatigued. Very, very difficult.
Boys get a lot of practice running a lot with Pavel chucking the disc all over the field there. But he saw the opening and went for it. And Andrew Goldstein, who they called Chowder, coming up with the big play. 8:38 left in your third quarter. 14-10 AlleyCats. But the Wildfire seem to be showing a little bit of life here. Working the right side of the field, past midfield now, way down into the Chicago Wildfire end of the hammer throw into the end zone for the score.
See, again, Indianapolis lined up on that left side in a side stack, really isolating cutters in space. Chicago tried to poach, but the poacher over the top, which is on the deep side of the field, did not get close enough to the sideline to really prevent that offender from getting the disc, because at a certain point, the farther they get down the field, you have to make a choice of who's going to cover that guy, because then there'll be somebody else filling that space. And Chicago didn't make any type of decision, and unfortunately for Chicago, Indianapolis was able to get that disc up the sideline, and then that thrower made an incredible throw over the mark to the guy that cut back across the field. What an incredible throw. That type of hammer is a low hammer, really has no float, but just gets to the offender on a rope.
And with these cold conditions, I would imagine that would be about the hardest disc to try to receive.
You know, it seems like it, but usually those types of throws, whether it's a hammer, a higher release hammer, or one that comes on a rope like that, actually, by the time it gets to the offender, generally aren't coming at too fast a speed to make it a difficult catch.
Wildfire knocking on the end zone door again here. Pavel into the end zone for the score. Ross Barker. He has a knack for getting open. It's 15-11.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed is that Indianapolis has done a good job of putting pressure on the Chicago dumps, and I can already tell that working on the communication between the thrower and some of the dumps is going to be something that Chicago will be practicing this coming week. Indy's just done too good of a job in terms of covering the Chicago dumps and the throwers not being able to recognize where the space is to throw it. There's too much space on this field to not be able to get the Frisbee in some sort of space to be able to make a clean catch. But kudos to Indianapolis for really putting that type of pressure that they are in Chicago.
AlleyCats on the disc. Working up the middle of the field. Jacobs going deep. Oh, another fantastic play for the score. That was Rick Gross coming up big for the disc.
That was a great catch. The offender, Rick Gross, was able to box out Egan on that play because it looked like it was going to be going over his head, but he did a good job of backing up into Egan and not letting him box him out of that play, and still was able to rise up and make that catch.
Been a lot of plays today that I kind of refer to it as a 50-50 disc, where the disc is up there, defender and the offensive player both with what appears to be an equal chance for the disc. AlleyCats have been coming up with the big percentage of those plays.
Yeah, that would probably be one of the throws that I would call a 50-50 disc, you know, and Indy just has done a good job of making the plays. You know, Chicago's got to figure out a way to, you know, make some of those plays on those 50-50 discs. Just like the end zone, it's some of those little plays that can make a difference between a W and an L.
Ross Barker with the disc for the Wildfire. Down 5, they need to come up with a big play here. Pardo in the middle of the field.
It was almost a turn. Pardo slowed down to catch that Frisbee, almost giving the defender an opening to make a D.
Pavel works it back to Barker. Barker has Max over on the left-hand side of the field. Max flipping it up to midfield to Pardo. Pardo back to Barker. Barker over to Johansson.
Chicago is too deep in general on all of their cutters. They're just standing much too far deep to make any type of deep cut, and Indianapolis is just sitting on those unders.
Miller into the end zone. Knocked away by the AlleyCats defender, and they'll come up empty.
That was an incredible play from the Indianapolis defender. He caught up and was able to leap past Chowder to make that D and knock it out. That was a great, great play. What looked like it was going to be a goal.
It looked like Goldstein had that one. But a great recovery by the AlleyCats. Now they get a little sloppy with the disc in their own end zone. The Wildfire player down, and he is hurt.
That's Danny. Looked like he may have hit his head coming down.
6:17 left in the third quarter, and we got an injury timeout on the field.
You don't see it too often, but sometimes when you make a high bid like Danny just did, sometimes you come down on your face, your neck or head might get jerked around a little bit and cause you to be a little dizzy.
This game takes a lot of wear and tear on the body. Is it getting a little harder each year?
You know, I feel like at least for me, I feel like I have to put in about 5% more work to reach the same amount of physical fitness.
Miller walks to the sideline. The AlleyCats will take over.
You know, I love training though. I love sport. I love competition, and you know, it certainly takes a toll on just, you know, your social life sometimes, because you got to put in the work outside of, you know, your normal day-to-day job. But, you know, it's just something that I've always loved and craved, and I don't see myself stopping, at least in the near future.
Wildfire take over in midfield after that sloppy play by the AlleyCats. Now a foul on the AlleyCats. We'll give Pavel a chance here, just inside midfield. Works it up the right-hand side to Pardo. Pardo, back to Pavel. Love the way Pavel waves that disc around.
Got to get a dump. Nice cut for Simon.
Pavel works it back to the middle of the field. Barker.
What you saw from Simon there, he made a good cut, got open, but he made his upline cut too far to the cone and didn't make it enough to the sideline, so the Indianapolis defender was able to poach off and prevent him from getting the disc.
Good crisp passing by the Wildfire. Now Pardo going up the right-hand side and in for the score.
That was the Wildfire were able to score on that point, but candidly, they're probably kicking themselves because they made it a lot harder than it needed to be. Credit to Indianapolis for playing great D, but the Wildfire had opportunities there in terms of some of the openings that they had, but just weren't in the right places or the right timing. You know, the Wildfire down 4 here. I think as a defensive unit, we've got to figure out a way to get some quick turns and some quick scores to get the offense, the Chicago Wildfire offense, a little more focused and back in this game, because right now they're a little frustrated. They could use a little help from the defense here.
16-12, the Indianapolis with the lead. 4:37 left in your third quarter. Jacobs back to the middle of the field, firing it into the end zone for the score. Once again, the AlleyCats find the gap in the Wildfire defense and exploit it for the score.
That was Keegan North with a hammer. Fellow teammate of Ross Barker, U24 gold medalist. Great, great hammer. Keegan North's just a really, really solid all-around player, and clearly has the confidence to make a hammer throw in the center of the field to a cutter streaking to the break side. What a great throw from Keegan North. The Wildfire just haven't been able to figure out how to stop the Indianapolis offense. They've just been very, very smooth, seem very confident with the disc, and in general, the pressure just hasn't been there. If the Wildfire are going to get back in this game, they've got to figure out a way to pressure some of the Indianapolis offenders.
4:15 left in the third quarter, and the Wildfire on the offense. Pardo up the middle of the field. Bark. Pavel into the end zone for the score. Max Trotter with his first goal of the night. And they get it within 4.
The consistent theme for the Wildfire offense seems to be that after their first 1 or 2 cuts, they're able to get open. Sometimes the throw doesn't come, but the guys that are sitting on the rails, which are the guys that are essentially waiting on the outside of the 40, 50 in the middle of the field, you know, close to the sideline, they're not getting in close enough for any type of thrower to make any type of throw or an opportunity for them to get more yards. They've got to figure out a way to, once those primary guys cut, that the fill cuts get in there, because there is open space. They're just not taking advantage of it.
Wildfire setting up their defense. Boys very aggressive on the D, but the AlleyCats break it free. Going into the end zone. in and out of the hands of the AlleyCat cutter. And the Wildfire will take off. They got a big break there. Let's see if they can take advantage of this with just 3:29 left in the third quarter.
You know, you see that sometimes where you think a defender's going to get the D, and they end up missing it, and you're not ready for it, and that's exactly what happened there.
Wildfire throwing the disc away deep in their own end. Now the AlleyCats into the end zone for the score again. Keegan North.
That's just a mistake that after a break like that, you want to make the offense run. You know, I mentioned it earlier in the first half that the Wildfire defense did score on a very, very long point where the Indy offense was out there, and if they're going to get back in this game, they've got to figure a way to wear them down. Indianapolis, they've scored in pretty quick fashion, and in general, if they get a turn like that, they've got to figure out a way to get at least 20, 30 throws, even if they don't score, to wear them down, give themselves a chance.
And once again, for the Wildfire, sort of an unforced error deep in their own end. That wasn't great defense by Indianapolis. That was just sloppy play with the disc by the Chicago team. Ross Barker in the middle of the field for your Wildfire. To Pavel. Pavel back to Ross Barker.
Good fake, although he missed Danny right in the center of the field.
Mighty Max works it to Pardo.
Danny's isolated.
Danny doesn't look any worse for wear after that injury. Pavel Giannis, middle of the field. Fires a nice diving play by Ross Barker.
That was a really good double team, timely double team from Indianapolis. There was a cutter that was wide open coming underneath, but the Indianapolis defender came in and just double teamed and made it really, really hard and almost caused the turnover.
Pavel Pardo now fires it down by the end zone to Johansson into Max Trotter for the score.
Again, that almost just seemed a little bit hard for the Wildfire offense. They scored, but Indianapolis, timely double teams, really just causing the Wildfire to make some almost poor decisions. And they were able to get through on that one, but credit to the Indianapolis D tonight so far. They've been doing a great job of just containing some of the deep cuts and isolation that the Chicago Wildfire are trying to do.
Wildfire back within 4 with 2:07 left in the third quarter here. This game of Ultimate, especially at the AUDL level, game of streaks. If you can avoid the big streak for the other team, you got a chance to keep in it.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you take away the first 3 points of the game where they went down 3-0, this would be a one-point game.
AlleyCats in the middle of the field.
Chicago's playing a straight man-to-man D here. They're doing a good job pressuring them. They look like they're running hard. Keegan's got the disc. We'll see what he does. Dumps it.
Over the top, into the end zone for the score. How much of that was just the Wildfire getting run down with that long point?
You know, usually 30 seconds to 40 seconds is when the speed of play will generally start to dwindle a little bit. And then I would say exponentially after about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, that's when the speed of play starts going down. So everybody was still moving rather quickly at that point, but that just looked to be a miscommunication on the break side. Looked like a throw might not come, but some good throwers out there for Indianapolis that they've just been recognizing the open space on the field, and Indy again has been taking advantage of what Chicago's been giving them.
Every time it looks like Chicago's going to get back in this game, Indianapolis comes up with a big throw, and gets that lead back out to a nice, comfortable 5. Pavlianis in the middle of the field for your Wildfire to Max. X-Trotter to midfield to Pardo.
See, there's no next cut here. That's the problem with the Wildfire offense right now. There's 2 guys that were still sitting on the rails. They had nobody else. So there's plenty of open space, but nobody there to take advantage of it.
Pavel Johansson. Johansson looking over the field. Nothing there. It goes to Pavel. Pavel goes over the top into the end zone for the score. Ross Barker just kind of snuck away from the defense and got himself into open space. And Pavel, seeing it, made the big play for the score.
Pavel's doing a good job of seeing the field right now. He seems to be getting into a rhythm. Had a few mistakes or just miscues early, but seems to be getting the rhythm. Definitely playing with a little bit of sense of urgency right now because I know he knows that unless they're able to continue the clean offensive points, that they're not going to be able to maintain or stay in this game.
Big defensive stop is needed here for your Chicago Wildfire to end the third quarter strong. Dan Vakarov with the pole. Gets lots of hang time.
43 seconds is a lot of time here. Indianapolis does not have to do anything too quickly. Chicago's coming down in the junk to slow them down, which is pretty smart. They've already taken 15 seconds off the clock. They can kind of continue to contain them and keep them throwing little passes around the end zone. They won't give them a chance to score.
AlleyCats still deep in their own end. Now find a little break up the right-hand side. Working it just over midfield. Now the Wildfire defense having troubles catching up with the play. Whistle on the play. Foul call to put this disc right at just outside the goal line. AlleyCats give up a little bit of ground. 6 seconds left. Fired into the end zone for the score.
Wow, Indianapolis was extremely patient on that and was able to just keep Chicago away from the disc for about 15 seconds. And then they found a lane up the right side of the field, and the Wildfire did not adapt. Those markers were forcing flick, and all of Chicago's poached defenders were in the center of the field. If you get the disc on the sideline in those situations, all of your defenders are in the middle of the field. You have got to throw a straight-up mark, force the disc back to the center, because Indianapolis, that was where the space was, and they just took advantage of it. Chicago's got to adapt and throw a little bit flatter mark and keep them from throwing up the field, keep them throwing sideways or going backwards.
4 seconds left in your third quarter. Wildfire down by 5. Pole floats out of bounds.
Look for Indianapolis to double team Pavel here. Going to look to double team Pavel. Pavel is going to throw to either Ross. They're covering Ross, so Max will just get it, and Max is just going to have to dish it.
Pavel throws it up for grabs. It'll fall short of the end zone, and that's it for your third quarter. We played 3 quarters out here at Benedetti Worley Stadium. It's the Chicago Wildfire home opener, but them Indianapolis AlleyCats are being rude guests, up 20-15.
Yeah, that last throw there from Pavel looked to be a little bit of frustration. I think he, wanted to make a play, but the smart decision would have been to just throw it to Max, give him a little bit of a cleaner look, because that disc didn't even make it to the end zone line.
Welcome back to Benedetti Worley Stadium here on the campus of North Central College in Naperville. It is the home of the Chicago Wildfire. All season long, Dennis Michelson, Kirk Gibson bringing you the live play-by-play call as we start the fourth quarter. The AlleyCats will start off with the disc up by 5.
So Indy in a side stack here. It's isolating space. Chicago not sending anybody in space. And there's an opportunity.
Oof.
Wow.
Big play for the AlleyCats. They'll come up firing for the score.
I'm not sure if it's our vantage point here, but Chicago has got to figure out a way to stop Indianapolis isolation here. It was very clear what Indianapolis wants to do in a side stack, any team for that matter, and they just left one guy in space, and nobody was offering any type of help playing center field to prevent any type of or continued isolation cuts. And that was a big miscue from Chicago. A poor throw from Indy, made a great play, but should not have even occurred if there was defensive help.
Wildfire seems to be starting out playing real good, tough defense, keeping them bottled up. But one cut is all it seems to be making to open up the field, and Wildfire is slow to react.
Yeah, sometimes on a defensive line, you know, if 6 guys are playing great D but one isn't, it's very, very challenging to, you know, and frustrating sometimes to keep the focus up if there's one guy that might be out of position or just isn't able to get any help.
Pavel going deep. One of his signature long, high, hanging floaters, and Pardo just running it down for that score.
With Pardo in open space, it's difficult to overshoot him. Pavel did do that in the first half, which is a rarity, but Pavel this time threw a little bit of an angle on it. Pardo had plenty of separation and making it really an easy catch for Pardo.
Pardo's one of the best cutters in the league, but what amazes me is how he can just sneak away from that defense. You'd think they'd be ready for him to go deep like he does, but he seems to float out there and just kind of get his separation.
Pardo's one of the fastest guys on the team and in general on the field, and he's got great quickness, great acceleration, and of course good top speed. And unfortunately for Indy on that point, they just weren't able to contain that. You know, it's difficult sometimes. Like I said, Indy's been playing straight man-to-man D, and with Pardo, if you don't get behind him, he's going to burn you.
Into the end zone for the score. AlleyCats made a nice play on that disc. 2 Wildfire defenders in the area.
Good movement again for Indianapolis. Just the Wildfire, they were close. They had a couple opportunities where it looked like they were able to make a play, but Indy just snagging the disc out of the air sometimes right before a defender makes a play. And in that situation, again, reading it perfectly, reaching the disc at his max height in the end zone, and not leaving any opportunity for the Wildfire to make a play.
Another big play by Levi Jacobs. He's come up big on a couple of those discs tonight. And it's 22-16. AlleyCats, 11:06 left in the fourth quarter.
You know, the Wildfire are down 6. At this point, if you're on offense, you've got to find a way to get some quick scores. Generally, you're probably not feeling too hot about the chances of winning this game, but you can't count yourself out because you never really know. A few quick breaks, they could be back in this game.
Max Trotter and Ross Barker playing pitch and catch in the middle of the field. Now up the left-hand side to Pavel. Pavel to Miller. Back to Max. Max is almost like a little lazy throw there, but Pardo on the disc. Max now swings it over to the left-hand side. Pavel up over the top.
Good Pavel. That was a good double team by Indy. Pavel was able to get it off. If they had done that against potentially any other thrower, it made it a little more difficult, but Pavel's just too good to be able to, too smart to not make a good throw off the sideline.
Pardo to Miller. Miller into the end zone for the score. That looked like Goldstein again.
Danny almost looked like he was wide open the entire point. Again, a couple opportunities where the Wildfire had space in the center of the field, made one cut, they got it, and there was no follow-up after that. And sometimes when there looked like there was going to be a follow-up, some of the handlers or cutters from behind the Frisbee came right through the center of the field, cutting anything off. And if you're going to try to isolate some space, you've got to be able to not, if you're a handler or a cutter from behind the disc, you can't just run right through the middle of the field because you cut off any one of your teammates. And I think that's got to be a little frustrating for some of the cutters downfield, and probably the reason for some of the hesitation for not cutting.
When you've got a big, comfortable lead like this with just 10 minutes left, do you change your offensive strategy at all if you're the AlleyCats?
No. You do not. Changing the offensive strategy usually would lead to some sort of lackadaisical approach, because the reason why you're changing is because you're up by so much. And usually when you do that, it can cause, the offenders to not run as hard or potentially be a little lazier on throws and cuts.
Nothing lazy there for the AlleyCats. Another tough score. And it's 23-17 with 9:33 left to play.
Gosh, that type of throw was a bladey throw and just hit the offender in stride. Playing against, it's usually something that you'd see against the Japanese. The Japanese players, the Buzz Bullets is their national team, the Buzz Bullets is the top club team in Japan, and all of their players play on the Japanese national team. And what makes it so difficult to play against the Japanese, they're so fast, they're so quick, and you would think that if they throw a couple hucks, the generally height is not to their advantage, but because their hucks are usually so pinpoint and thrown bladey that it's nearly impossible to catch up, and that's exactly what you saw there. They threw a bladey huck right in stride, impossible to make any type of play on, no matter how fast you are.
The AlleyCat pull goes out of bounds in their own half of the field.
Great throw from Pavel out of the double team.
Pavel to Max to Ross. Ross Parker into the end zone for the score. Wildfire quickly strike to get it back within 5.
That was really a great out for Pavel by throwing that hammer. Indy, I thought, made a mistake by not covering that offender downfield. The guy that they left open was Simon, which was closest to us on the, where North Central College is, that sign right on the C of Central. And the dump was covered by Max, so honestly, they should have trapped the Wildfire there, but somebody made a mistake, and Pavel was able to get off an easy hammer.
Sakura's pull out of bounds. The AlleyCat will start off at the brick mark.
This is one of the second or third vert stack Indy's run. Look for one of the first guys in the stack to go deep and one of the deep guys to come under.
AlleyCats firing the disc, but come up empty. Sakura on the play. And Pavel calling the timeout from the sidelines for your Wildfire. So the offense will come back on the field with 9:08 left in regulation out here. Benedetti Worley Stadium, the home opener for your Chicago Wildfire, down 5. But this team never quits.
This is a really critical point right here, in my opinion. The D was able to get a block here with a short throw from the Indianapolis offender. The offense coming on the field, and if they can score, put this in within 4, the game is not out of reach. So this will just be critical. If the Wildfire plays smart, they should be able to get a couple throws in here, get a look either to the end zone, and if not, that shouldn't be an issue or a problem. Don't panic because, you know, you want to tire out anybody on Indianapolis at this point. They have subbed in their defense, so hopefully they can just work them down.
Remember, Wildfire fans, after the game, Board and Barrel Restaurant right here in downtown Naperville is the place where the players go for a little liquid refreshment. Wildfire on the disc. Just past midfield, Pardo to Pavel. Pavel working the disc up the left-hand side now into the end zone for the score. Ross Barker.
That was a great sequence from the Wildfire there. Indy played good D, had good marks, but the Wildfire were just able to take advantage of the isolation. Pardo made a good cut, was able to cut under, do a triple cut, cut under, cut deep, almost get about 5 to 7 more yards on his underneath pass and gave the Wildfire good position.
Wildfire suddenly back in this thing, only down 4 with 8:45 left to play.
This is the time of the game where you want to pile on, get aggressive, take a couple chances. You know, if you don't get it, the Indianapolis offense has just been so smooth that, you know, if you take a couple chances, hopefully that'll screw them up a little bit to instead of giving them easy scores.
AlleyCats to midfield now, throw the disc deep into the end zone for the score.
Looked like they almost had an opportunity, but that is a tough backhand. That is over the center of the field where generally most of the players are sitting in stride to that receiver, where even if the defender was close, would have had no chance. That was a tremendous throw from the Indianapolis offender.
And Cameron Brock coming up with the big score. 24-19, 8:28 left. Another short pull by the AlleyCats. Johansson to midfield. Working the disc up the right-hand side. Now Pavel to Pardo. Back to Pavel. Max working up the right-hand side. Pavel.
Couple shaky throws from Chicago here that if they had been just a little bit worse, it could have been turnovers, or even the defender was in a better spot. They could have had a turn here. But so far, here they've been turning it, passing it pretty well.
Ross Barker about 10 yards out, works the disc back to Pavel. Back around the left-hand side of the field into the end zone for the score.
That throw from Simon, actually very, very, very difficult. And around the end zone, generally a very risky throw. That was almost what I would call, and look from here, to be a laser throw. Hit him in stride, which was great. Didn't give the defender a chance to make a play. But I would generally throw something a little softer, a little more out in front, and let the offender make a play on it, because the margin for error is a lot smaller. And, you know, when I think of, you know, an offense or a defense moving on the turn, reducing your chances to make mistakes or the offender to potentially drop the Frisbee is really the calculation that I'm always trying to make.
What's the toughest part of this game, Curtis? Is it the physical play of being able to make all the throws and catches, or is it reading the field and reading the defense and what they're trying to do to you to contain you as an offense?
The toughest part of this game is really being able to throw and make decisions on throws in such a short time period. You know, when you are out on the field, things are happening very, very quickly. Guys are getting open, doors are closing. If guys are poaching, your mark is moving in front of you, and you only have 7 seconds to throw. So being able to make a smart decision, throw to an open offender, throw to space, and not give it the defender an opportunity to get the Frisbee, that is the hardest part about this game. And clearly, you know, if you look at the first half, especially of this game, you know, Indianapolis was tight on the dumps. Chicago wasn't able to make those throws and give the offender an opportunity to even make a play. And so if you can make those throws when defenders are covering tight on either cutters downfield or the dumps, those are the things that make somebody from a average player to a good player or a good player to a great player. And if you got a team of guys that can make those decisions, smart decisions, high percentage passes, you're going to be a great team.
Once again, the AlleyCats exploiting the Wildfire's lack of ability to recover quickly on defense and came up with that score to get it back up by 5. Now the Wildfire back on offense around midfield. Johansson going deep. He's got Pardo. No, he's got Ross Barker open. Makes the catch, but out of the end of the end zone there. Had a shot at the disc, but it just ran out of room.
Yeah, Simon's got to be a little frustrated. He had an opportunity. Ross was wide open, but his release was very, very high because he was trying to get it above the defender. But a smarter play would have been to pivot out a little further, put a little outside-in curve around it to get it around the defender, but then give Ross the opportunity to make a play inbounds.
Quickly, the AlleyCats on the attack. Looked like the Wildfire defender misread that disc, but so did the offensive player for the AlleyCats, and the disc falls out of reach. And the Wildfire will take over. They're down 5, 5:50 to play here in the fourth quarter.
The Wildfire have got to score quickly here. They're down 5. They've got to figure out a way to score quick. Ooh, that looked like that was a foul there. Got to do that, Pavel.
Pavel looked like he had an opening. They dumped this short, but there was a foul on that play too.
Now's the point in the game where Pardo had about 5 yards deep on his guy. He was about 25, 30 yards deep, a little deeper than you probably like, but with 5 minutes left, Pavel's got to put that on a rope and get that out there because they don't have time to be swinging the disc around. It's killing clock.
Max Trotter just short of midfield. Ross Barker going deep. Lays it out there. Great play on the disc.
From Chowder.
Andrew Goldstein. They call him Chowder.
You know, you asked about changing the strategy earlier, and, you know, when you're down 5, now 4 with under 5 minutes to go, and you're on offense and you have the Frisbee, this is the time to change that strategy and figure out a way to get the disc in the end zone a lot quicker. And, you know, kudos to Ross for putting out in front of Chowder and coming down with it. But, you know, if Pavel was able to hit Pardo there, that could have saved about 30 seconds on the clock here. And with only 4:45 left, down 4, and the Indianapolis offense playing the way that they have, you got to figure out ways to score faster. So if the Chicago Wildfire are able to get a D here, they've got to figure out a way to get the disc in the air quick and into the end zone.
Yeah, down 4 now. The clock is going to be your additional enemy here. AlleyCats working it up the right-hand side. Looks like there was a foul on the play there. Rick Gross also looked like he took a bad step, turned an ankle. AlleyCats will take over. Putting the disc back into play is Gross.
Ooh, that was a chance right there. There's Keegan, though, for Indianapolis, making a good play, a timely play.
Working the disc up the middle of the field. Now going deep. Player is wide open. Wildfire player makes a good recovery. Disc sort of floated, and he could.
You know, that was a turnover for Indianapolis, but I got to tell you, the Wildfire lucked out on that one because there were guys open all over the field, and the last player back was Egan, and his offender was about 10 yards behind him, and that cannot happen. So the D's got to figure it out here. Luckily, the O's coming on for the Wildfire should be able to close out a point here, make it a little closer, but that could have easily been a goal for Indianapolis.
Just ran out of room on the sidelines, but had his player beat. What's that like for a player when he all of a sudden realizes that his defender's got that big of a head start on him?
Well, it's certainly an opportunity to show off how fast you are because there's really no other thought there than running as fast as you can to the point where you think the disc is going to come down. But in general, it's kind of like the oh, you know what moment because you're going to basically get blamed for an easy goal for the opposing team.
Yeah, Slimer was beat on that play, but he never gave up as soon as he realized what was going on. He was hustling for all he was worth to get back in the play. .407 left in the fourth quarter. Wildfire down by 4.
You know, Indianapolis is going to double team here. Max should be able to get an easy throw. If I was calling the play right now, I'd probably set up in some sort of horizontal to give an easy huck look. We're at the point in the game where they got to get an easy huck look if it's at all possible. And being in this vert stack, it probably will be a little bit more difficult to do that because the play will set up a little bit longer if the guy from the front of the stack cuts deep or even the 5. So, you know, we'll see what happens here.
Max Trotter firing up the right-hand side.
Got to do it.
Looked like Pardo was coming open.
I probably would have taken my chances there with Pardo cutting deep, just stretching at this point in the game.
Johansson with the disc.
Who's going?
Dumps to Pavel over
Smart.
the top. Oh,
that is brutal. That is brutal.
Wildfire players just looked like they were out of sync on that play again.
Well, you know what Simon did right there was he threw a backhand to the flick side, and generally it shouldn't be a difficult throw, but he rushed it, and when you do, sometimes getting to that release point of when you need to release it to hit the offender in stride is a little difficult. He should have just taken a second and really finessed that backhand or just thrown a flick. Would have been a lot easier, prevented a turnover.
Whistle on the play. AlleyCats were moving the disc down pretty well, and it looks like the AlleyCats taking a timeout here to get their offense back on the field. Chance to kind of ice this one.
Yeah, if you're Indianapolis right now, you got to be feeling pretty confident. They get the disc in the end zone here. You can pretty much call it a game. Wildfire have got to figure out a way to prevent them from scoring. And the key here is that they could play a little junky zone, maybe come off the handler a little bit to prevent them from running any type of set play, but that's going to kill time on the clock. And so Indy could just really take dumps all the way back down to the field and kill about 2 minutes off the clock here if they really wanted to. Probably not a strategy that they're going to go and execute, but they'll probably take the goal if they can get it.
Just 3:05 left here in the fourth quarter. AlleyCats 25, the Wildfire 21. Been a bit of a sloppy game for the home team.
Yeah, too many drops in the first quarter and first half in general. too many unforced errors, especially on the throwing side as well, that it's just too difficult to come back from if it's really all across the board on the entire team, and it really was in the first half.
AlleyCats knocking on the door. Fires it right down to the goal line.
See, this is where Indianapolis would use a smart double team. Chicago has not really done that today. Indy usually doing the double team, creating a much more difficult throw.
Indy very patient, working some clock. Retreating all the way back out to midfield now.
And they are perfectly content to do that. As I said, they are just going to kill clock, and if Chicago's going to poach off like they have, they're just going to dump it and use that open space. They don't have to score here.
Foul on the Chicago defender.
Was that a double foul?
That's two.
Did he foul them right a second time?
Yeah, it looked like after they marched off the first 10 yards, the Wildfire defender getting right in his face. And the referee calling a second foul.
Yeah, you could see that's Keegan right there. Just took a look at the clock. Was in no rush to get rid of the Frisbee.
Under 2 minutes now. The AlleyCats just milking this one. Into the end zone, but out of the end zone.
Big mistake from Keegan right there. Big mistake.
Now the Wildfire with a chance, but time is running out. They got to strike quick.
They got to figure out a way to get an open look. Somebody needs to streak deep. Here's you go. You got to put it here.
Dave Woods.
Somebody's got to go.
Working up the right-hand side to Kingma. Back to the middle of the field.
Got to streak deep. You got to look. You got to look.
Leverson with the disc to midfield, but the clock is winding down. Sikora.
Yeah.
Gives up some room to Rummelhart again.
Any other point in the game, this would be a great offensive possession. Well, except for that. But, you know, any other point in the game, it would have been a great offensive possession. But just killing too much time on the clock. Should have taken advantage of some of the hook looks that they had.
Coming up empty is Kingma. And now the AlleyCats just going to wind the clock down here. Deep in their own zone. Inside of 30 seconds to play.
Yeah, the Wildfire have to be frustrated here.
Going deep. Nice play on the disc. Again by the AlleyCat offensive player. Puts the disc back into play, knocking on the door. But they can wind this one down too, and they will. Inside of 5 seconds. That's it, folks. 25-21 will be your final score. The Indianapolis AlleyCats 25, the Chicago Wildfire 21. We want to thank some of our great supporters of the Chicago Wildfire this season. The folks from Board and Barrel, that's where we're going to be heading over for a little post-game refreshment. Folks from Body Armor, a premium sports drink that helps keep the Chicago Wildfire team hydrated. NovaCare Rehabilitation. They'll keep everybody on this Wildfire team off the injury list.
I went there this past week. Great guy over there that helped diagnose me. Nice, very nice people over there. Highly recommend it.
Friction Gloves and Universe Point, the official gloves and footwear of the Chicago Wildfire. I want to thank my folks over at Gerald Kia of North Aurora, giving me the chance to leave a little early here on a Saturday and heading over to the big ballpark here. And, of course, yours truly, D. Mike, on the sales floor over there. So come on in. We'll give you the Wildfire discount. How about it? Save $500 off of a new Kia or any pre-owned car on our lot. And we do have the biggest.
$500 is a lot. $500 is a lot in anything.
So mention D. Mike. Come see me. out of Gerald Key of North Aurora. Thanks to Matt and Sean and Ferris for giving me the rest of the afternoon off. Lasso is also a big, proud sponsor of the Chicago Wildfire. And, of course, keeping up with all of the events here in the Ultimate community in this region, it's the folks from Great Lakes Ultimate Events. They're also proud sponsors of the Glue Railgate. Take the train out to every Chicago Wildfire home game here at North Central College this year from the city. GlueUlti.com for more information. Well, the Chicago Wildfire came up on the losing side of this one tonight, Kurt, but I want to thank you for a great job up here in the booth.
It's been a pleasure. Quite a different vantage point from up here. It's great talking with you, sharing a little bit of, insight and just taking a look at the game from up here. Quite different, but honestly, you can get a lot of play-by-play and information being up high, and definitely a lot to take away this game for the Wildfire and for Indy. They did an absolutely great job.
Frustrating night for your Chicago Wildfire, but they'll be back in action right here at Benedetti Worley Stadium on the campus of North Central College in a couple of weeks here. Next game coming up May the 12th at home against the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds. For Kurt Gibson and all of our great broadcasting crew up here that kept us on the air all night, this is Dennis Michelson saying tune in to the Wildfire Fever podcast each and every week, folks, and come on back and see us again out here at Benedetti Worley Stadium. Good night, everybody.